Hi, everyone, and welcome to SoundStory. I'm Randy Karraker, and it is great to have you with us as we hear about the life and times of Glenn Clark and Judy Allen, who are here in studio with us. First of all, Judy, great to meet you, and thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
And nice to meet you, Glenn, as well.
You too, sir.
All right, so let's start with this. You two have known each other for a long time, but let's start before you met each other. Glenn, tell us about where you were born and where you grew up.
I grew up same place I live now.
And that is?
Is in, well, the address is Iuka, Illinois, but it's just out in the middle of the country.
Okay, and what was Iuka, Illinois like when you were a youngster, when you were 5, 6, 10 years old?
Well, we had dirt roads, went to a one-room school, and you milked the cow to get your milk, and churn the butter, and the story goes on the old time.
Okay, so you were milking cows. How early were you getting up in the morning? Was this before you went to school?
No, I didn't milk them. Dad did.
Dad did. But you had to wake up, I'll bet.
Yeah, we had to get up.
Yeah. So what was it like now?
Walk to school.
And a one-room school. So did you have all the different grades in one room?
Yeah,
Is that the way it worked?
1 to 8. 1 to 8.
And everybody
First to 8th grade.
That's amazing. And was there one teacher for the whole group then?
Yep.
That must have been something. As you look back, how did that work for you? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, because the older kids sort of taught the younger kids.
That's the way it worked, huh?
Yeah.
That's great. And Judy, you're from Xenia, Illinois, correct?
Well, Orchardville, actually. Xenia's the address.
Okay, but Orchardville is the actual place. And how about you? What was life like for you as a youngster in Orchardville?
Well, just similar to Glenn, the one-room school, and was just a half a mile down the road. And my dad was the school teacher early on. But my sister and I, Peggy, his wife, both got to start to school when we were 4 because our mom worked, and Dad took us to school with him.
And I would think that you were being taught all the time, whether you knew it or not. With your dad being the teacher, you were learning all the time. Right?
Well, just like he said, you're sitting in there listening and all the other grades, so you do pick up a lot. Mm-hmm. And the other side of that, we both graduated when we were 16 from high school, so
wow.
You don't get too many jobs, when you're 16.
Right. What did you do during the summer then, when you weren't in school? What were summers like for you?
Usually spent at my grandparents'. That was my good home away from home.
And what did you do there when you were there?
Well, I just had a lot of friends, and they lived right there at Orchardville, and we just rode our bikes and read comic books, because no TV.
Right. So,
yeah.
And how about you, Glenn? What was life like for you during the summers? You're a baseball fan. Were you a baseball fan then?
Yeah. I've been a baseball fan since I was a little guy. My dad was. He listened to the radio. We didn't have TVs.
So when you were a youngster, during the day, did you and your buddies get out and play ball?
Yeah, we went swimming. Went to the creek, ponds, and just did what boys do out in the country.
And then what was it like then, because it is so different now at the way we consume baseball. What was it like as a young baseball fan for you?
Oh, I remember Sportsman Park. I got to go there one time. Mm-hmm. I got to see Stan Musial play. The best baseball player I ever saw was Willie Mays.
Really?
He was unbelievable. Got to see him play.
Did you get to see him at Sportsman's Park as a member of the Giants, too?
I can't remember. I think it was there. Or it might have been downtown when it was first built.
And then when you were listening on the radio, was Harry Carey the voice of the Cardinals?
Yeah. So, him and Jack Buck.
So those were the two guys that you kind of grew up as the soundtrack of your summer, right?
Yeah. Then when Harry Carey left, I thought it was the end of the world because I liked Harry.
Okay, so I want you to tell me about working your way through school. First of all, you, Judy, you mentioned that you graduated when you were 16, and you are in a one-room school. What was it like after you graduated? What did you do next?
Got married.
How old
I
were
was still 6. I would have been, I got married in July, and I would have been 17 the next month in August.
Wow. And was that normal among you and your...
It was a lot more normal, yes,
Uh-huh.
than
To
it is
get
now.
married as a teenager.
Yeah, not very many went on to college.
Uh-huh. And then what about you, Glenn? What about when you finished high school?
I went to Salem High School, and well, in between, I went to IUCA. I went to 6th grade in one-room school, 7th and 8th to a bigger school, and then from there I went to high school with about 900 kids.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a big step up from.
I'll bet that was a culture shock. How did you do walking into that 900-student school?
I was lost for a while. I just lost.
But then once you got used to it, how were your grades?
Oh, I just average.
Uh-huh.
I just average.
Good.
I was too interested in sports and other stuff.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And so then when you finished school, high school, what did you do next?
I went to work on the railroad,
Uh-huh.
and then the car, it's called the car shed. They built railroad cars, and her husband worked there then.
Okay.
And then a few years there, and I got a chance to go out on the road and become a trainman. I rode the trains. I was a conductor eventually.
So let's talk about meeting Peggy, the first time you met Peggy. And you are brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So, Glenn, you were married to Judy's sister, correct?
Right.
So tell us about meeting Peggy for the first time.
Oh, there's a little old restaurant in Orchardville she's talking about. And I went in there, and there's this dark-haired girl with a guy. So I never thought no more about it. And I went back a few days later, and she was in there by herself. So I walked over and asked her if I could sit, and got talking to her, and I found out she wasn't too far from me. Closest girl I ever dated to the home.
Uh-huh.
That's where I met her, was that little old restaurant.
And how quickly did you know that Peggy was the one for Glenn?
It wasn't too long, 2 or 3 months.
Uh-huh.
But she was engaged at that time.
She was?
She was.
Okay, you
I
gotta tell me,
wasn't. She was.
You got to tell me how you got her out of her engagement and got her to marry
I don't
you.
know. You'd have to. I just got lucky. I got lucky.
Okay, let's talk to her sister. Do you know how this happened? That she was engaged to one guy and wound up marrying Glenn?
I think the other guy broke off the engagement.
Okay. So you wind up with Peggy, and then Judy, you wind up getting married as well. Tell us about your courtship and how you got married so quickly at the age of 17 to
Glenn, who's Glenn too.
Another Glenn.
Well, he just actually lived about mile and a half from me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd known him all my life.
Oh, that's so cute. And so, how soon in your life did you know that you would probably marry him? How old were you when you were in love with Glenn?
Well, we didn't date too long before I knew he was the right one.
Uh-huh. Good. And so automatically, you two, Glenn and Judy, you wind up meeting. How did that come about? That you met, obviously, her sister, and then you met her?
Yes, that's the way it worked.
So
I met her.
Still teenagers at that point?
No, I was probably 20 years old by then.
Okay. So, and what was it like? Did you guys double date? How did that work?
No, not really, because I was 4 years older than Peggy,
Okay.
my sister.
Good. And there's so much that goes into this, Judy, because even though you're older than her, you're pretty close, right?
Mm-hmm. Very close.
And tell us about some of your memories with your sister.
Well, our mother and dad was in, they sang country music.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a little, every weekend, I think it was on Saturday, in Onley, Illinois, WVLN Onley, they had a little program where they sang. And I don't know if Peggy ever did or not, but I remember one time I couldn't have been over 6 years old because I had to stand on a milk carton thing to be on the mic. But anyway, they sang a lot. So me and Peggy, as little girls, we went with them and we entertained too. And I know one time we entered a contest at Xenia, won first place and a blue ribbon. We won $10 and a blue ribbon.
Wow.
First
And
place.
$10 was a big deal.
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
point,
it was nice.
Right? Good. Do you remember the song you sang?
Well, we had, it was probably the Chattanooga Shoeshine Boy, because that was one of our specials.
Did you often sing together with your sister? Obviously, you had to be pretty good to sing together and win a competition, but when you were younger, did you two sing together?
Not that much. When we got older, no, we didn't.
Okay. And it seems like kind of a family tradition, too, with your parents getting involved in you. Has that something that throughout your life that whether it's your family or people around you have been entertainers?
Peg never did sing much, but I when I started going to church, then I sang a lot, and I had a friend I sang with, and we sang a lot of different places.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and then Glenn, you find yourself, as you mentioned, on the railroad and traveling around a little bit, right?
Yeah. You go to work and get on a train and go to, like Cairo, Illinois, from Central Illinois to Cairo, Illinois. I've been over here in East St. Louis and get on a train and take it to Cairo, Illinois, and lay over and come back.
Mm-hmm. And what was your job like? What exactly did you do?
Well, as a conductor, you keep the records of the cars and stuff, and
what were the trains carrying?
freight,
So
coal, and just everything trucks carry now, they used to carry on the railroad.
So was it uneventful, or did you ever have any situations?
No, yeah,
Tell us a scary story from a train.
I've killed 3 people.
Okay, well let's hear about this. What happened?
They pulled out in front of us
Oh, in a car?
in a car.
Oh man, and there's no way.
One time in Anna, Illinois, and the other time in Cesar, Illinois.
And so, what happens when the train hits a vehicle? Does it derail, or does it just?
No, you just hear a lot of glass flying and a lot of racket, and you don't want to experience it. I'll put it that way.
I can't imagine having to deal with that.
It's just like them bodies in there's like rag dolls. If you're watching, they just bounce around.
Yeah. And how many cars are on a train that you're conducting like that?
Oh, they're usually they're all sizes, anywhere from back then is 50 cars to 100.
Yeah. So that's just the point.
Now they're
is it as your kids and grandkids listen to this, that is a lot of power behind that train. That
you don't stop them quick.
No, and I guess the moral of the story is don't pull your car.
No, don't go across them. If them flashers are on, don't go across. Or if some places in the country they don't have flashers, they got marked, and you're supposed to pull up there and stop, and then go.
Right. Wait till the train passes.
Yeah.
Right.
If a train coming, then you can go. But they've improved the safety on the railroads, on the crossings a lot now.
Good. Now, in addition to being on the railroad, you were also in the National Guard, right?
Yeah, I was in the National Guard for 6 years.
And how did that go for you? Were you ever deployed?
No. Well, there was the riots in Carpendale when the kids.
What did you have to do there in Carbondale?
They sent us down there and they was rioting, and the kids were just really wasn't that bad, but the state police and us came in there and made them break up, and they broke every window from in Carpendale uptown down to the university. I don't know if you've probably been to Southern Illinois.
I have. I've been to Carbondale. Yeah. So it's and I would imagine a lot of those people that were involved were students there.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, there's mainly students.
Yeah, so just a raucous group. Okay, so Judy, as he's getting out on the road and he's doing his National Guard stuff, you're back, and both of you are starting your families. But was it strange? And I guess it was different at that time, though. But Peggy has to do a lot of the family raising with Glenn on the road, right? What was that like? So he's out on the train and out in the National Guard. Were you close with Peggy at that time?
Oh, yeah.
So, and you both are raising families that time. Tell us about that experience for you.
Tell 'em about Grandma.
My husband worked for the same railroad, but he was a Carmen welder. He was home every night.
Mm-hmm.
And Peg she worked hard, but we had our grandmother who was always available when we needed her, and she helped both of us with our little kids, raising them.
That is so great. What are some of your favorite memories about your grandmother helping you raise?
Oh, lands, there's so many. I know, and she lived to be 90, but she was in real good health, and I know both of the boys could tell a lot of stories about her. I know one year for Christmas, she spent the night with us because Grandpa had already passed on, and that particular year the boys got a tent.
Mm-hmm.
So we pitched the tent in the living room, and Grandma and the boys slept in the tent in the living room.
Oh, that's so great. That's great.
She'd play ball with them, you know, and but then whatever we need her to do, she was there to do it.
So Bart is born, he's 63 now. Was he born in 1960?
Bart's deceased.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, he was born in 60.
And then Sean was born in
64.
64. That's a lot of energy in a household. Were they rambunctious young men?
No. No, that's Sean. He's a good boy. He was always a good boy. Yeah.
That's great. And what was raising them like at that time? Because that was that was a tumultuous time in our country. So you're raising two kids, and you're going through a time where we lose a president, where we lose Martin Luther King, where we lose RFK when they're young boys. What was it like raising them at that point?
Well, you know, we lived out in the country, and we were all busy, everybody doing their thing, and I just don't really remember it being that, you know, they
More simple than
more simple. Yeah, it was.
So, and then Glenn, you have Luann and Dawn and John. Tell us about your kids and about raising them.
Oh, well, Peggy raised them and I furnished the money. That's about the way it was.
Yeah, well, but there must be things that you remember about the kids.
Oh,
right?
yeah. My boy, he never played like regular kids. He was always working. He was farming, or if you mowed the grass, he was out like he was baling hay. He had a little pedal tractor, and he was always picking that up. And but the best one on him is neighbor Peggy did hair, was a beautician, and she was there at home, and neighbor woman came over to get her hair fixed, and she said, you came in and asked Peggy, you know, where your boy is? And Peggy says he's outside, and he says, he's up. And that lady said, well, he's on the antenna stoke. He don't have any clothes on.
And did you have to get him down?
No, she got him down. I wasn't there. I just heard about it. And they transplanted the tomatoes one time. We put out a garden and put the tomatoes out, and he came along and transplanted, picked them up and replanted them. Well, we didn't have tomatoes that year.
I was going to ask if they survived. No.
They didn't survive.
And what about Luann? Tell us about her.
She's, well, she was always a student and wanted to make good grades and so forth, and she got to be a teacher. She's a third grade teacher now, but she's about ready to retire, and And she never, well, she had a little trouble for Peg when she was a teenager, but she made it through it. And Dawn's always was just a laid-back little girl, and other than she put a cake pan over her head, angel food cake, and I about never got that thing. I had to take a pair of snippers and snip that thing off of her head.
What are your aside from that? What's Dawn like? What?
Oh, she's just a sweet lady.
She is.
And what does she do now?
She's a assistant teacher, and she took in 2 little boys that their families was on drugs.
Foster
3
family.
and 7.
Oh man.
She's also, her husband's a pastor, and she's the children's pastor
Oh, that's great.
in Salem.
All right, Glenn, you need to tell us this story. Well, and we'll get to some trips later on. But the night before your wedding to Peggy, what happened?
The boys got me, and we went out for a bachelor deal, and they brought me home. Well, they didn't bring me home. They took her to her house and threw me out and took my breeches off, and I was running around in my underwear, and I had to go up to the house and knock on the door and get somebody to take me home.
And was Peggy the one?
Yeah, I think she was.
That's something. And then you made trips to Alaska and other parts. Tell us about your trip to Alaska.
Oh, that's a beautiful place. What fascinated me about Alaska, you don't see any trash along the road. You may see old cars abandoned, but you don't see any trash. And the water shocked me because I was looking for real clear water, and it's muddy looking up there. It's like like mud, really.
And what was the weather like?
I was there in the summer. It was nice. Cool, but nice.
And are you a fisherman? And did you?
No, I didn't fish. We flew in. We flew from here to Seattle, I think it was, and then Seattle up to Anchorage and rented an RV, and just me and my grandson. And that was after Peggy died. And we just drove around in Alaska and went, seen different things, and went to Sarah Palin's through it, her hometown. But there's another town there where they have muskox and cattle. But the muskox was fascinated me. At that time, they was trying to domesticate them, and so they could give them to the village, because that fur, down in there is one of the warmest fibers in the world.
So,
and they was getting them to the, what do you call it, Eskimos or indigenous, so they could have some income from the wool off of them muskox.
wow.
But I don't know if that panned out or not.
I was going to ask if it worked.
I don't know. I never have heard.
So, all right. So you've done other things. You worked in housekeeping. What sort of jobs did you have as you went through your life?
Well, mostly I was a stay-at-home mom until the boys were a pretty good age, good size, and the little school there in Orchardville, their custodian quit in mid-year, and we lived next door to one of the board members, and he wanted us to take the job, which I didn't want it. But he wouldn't leave unless we did, so I ended up doing that kind of work for about 11 and a half years.
A job that you didn't want, that you stuck with for 11 and a half years. Did you wind up liking it?
Well, yeah, they eventually closed that some of the little schools, smaller schools, and consolidated them into Wayne cities to the big, so we ended up working there.
So that's when you kind of, after 11 and a half years, retired from it, right?
Well, I quit.
Okay, yeah. How much pride do you take, and I know it's a great level of pride, You mentioned stay-at-home mom, but the fact that you were able to do that, the fact that when your kids needed you, you were there for them. How proud of you of that are you?
Very proud.
What makes you proud?
Well, I think now like one of my girlfriends was a school bus driver, and now they start them in at 3.5, 4 years old, and she said if I'm going to have to take babies to school, I'm going to need some car seats on the bus, because I think you need that time at home to bond with them, because once they're in school,
They're gone.
they're gone. And of course, now I realize now, with the way things are, that it takes maybe 2 incomes. But they get little kids out of bed every morning, and they drag them to a daycare center. I'm just old-fashioned.
Well, and there's value in having a family, right? In not only what we're talking about in terms of getting kids out of bed to school, but having a dinner at the table, right? And having
Yes,
the kids come home from
yes.
school if they're hungry, having snacks
You're
available
there.
for them. And like you say, the bonding time, if they need help with their schoolwork, the ability to do those sorts of things. And I'm sure that you did all of those, right?
Yeah. Well, they tried to start a kindergarten, and if they could get enough interest. But I said they never could get enough interest until Sean was ready to start first grade. And so that year they started in the summer, and the kids he ended up having to go 6 weeks to kindergarten, and then he started first grade. But no, I wanted them home with me. I figured they needed that time, and I did too.
Yeah. And Glenn, you talk about how you were gone so much. When you were with your kids, though, what was that like? What sort of things did you do together when you had that quality time with your kids?
Oh, we went sports stuff mainly. I mean, at school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't remember too much because I wasn't there much. But I also farm too. I also live on a farm, so I farm too besides railroading.
Yeah, cattle farmer, right?
Yeah, well, I grain farmed then a little and had some cattle, but Dad helped me too with that.
So.
But, yeah, and you'd get ready, you might get ready to go to a sporting event and the phone would ring and you'd have to go to work. Mm-hmm. That's the way I went to work. When the phone rung.
That was it, huh?
That's the way they called you to go to work.
Yeah. What was if you can remember, what was the biggest or the plan that you anticipated the most, and you got the phone call that said you got to come to work? Do you ever remember a time where you said, "Man, this job, I need it, but I wish they wouldn't have called me now"?
Yeah, lots of times. Lots of times done that.
So.
I've called them one time. They had a caller that would call you. I called them and asked them when I would get out. And they said, well, not tonight. So I was going to go to the movies at Mount Vernon. So we loaded up, got to the edge of the Mount Vernon. The phone rung. Had a beeper then. You had to go. You didn't have phones like today. You had to go hunt up a phone and call them and turn around and go back home and get ready to go to work.
Yeah.
And before that, Peg was my my beeper.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't have beepers. She had to sit by the phone all the time.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in the house.
Yeah. What a different world now. And I was going to ask you both about how the world has changed, and that's one of them is having the cell phone and having complete access. Can you imagine if you would have had a cell phone when they were calling you all the time? Whenever your phone would have never stopped ringing.
No, it would have been a lot nicer, that part. But there's parts about this thing I don't like nowadays either.
What?
Mainly, I don't like to be called all the time.
What are some of the biggest changes, though, from the time that you were a youngster to what we're living with today?
Well, phone's one thing, because you had one. I don't know if you ever saw an old phone on the wall where you cranked it.
Yes.
And you hold it up there and you talk into a mic just like this. To now, and then you got all this.
Right.
and you had an outhouse. You didn't have a bathroom in the house. Now, that young man probably don't even know what a outhouse is.
Do you remember a rough time as to when you got plumbing in your house?
Yeah, when Dad built the new house, we got plumbing. And I was probably about 7, 8 years old then.
Yeah, that made winters a lot more pleasant.
Oh, yes, very definitely.
Not having to go.
Didn't have to use the Sears and Roebuck catalog to wipe on.
Right. And how
Or
about you?
corn cobs.
Yeah, right, exactly. The corn cob. What about you, Judy? What are the biggest changes that you've experienced in your lifetime?
Well, just about, we didn't have indoor plumbing until when we got married. I have lived all my life in 2 houses. I mean, when Dad bought the farm, I think I was maybe 4 years old, and I lived there in the old house till they built a new house in 56, 57, and I moved into that. And then when I was 16 and got married, I moved back up into the old house. And then when my mother and dad passed away, we bought the farm, and I moved back in 95. But we didn't have indoor plumbing till 65.
Wow.
1965.
And again, what a difference in quality of life. Once you get indoor plumbing, you say, where's this been all my life, right?
But, I don't ever remember being that, that's just your life. You just
deal with it, right? It's what you have, right?
And I'd like to add another thing to his story, if I could.
Yes.
Don and John are, even though there's 2 years difference, Don was little, so they was more like twins. Well, one day they was there at their grandpa's, his dad, and there was, you'll have to correct me, a gravity flow wagon sitting there with shell corn in it. And
unloading it. It's unloading it.
And Don crawled over in it, and it was sucked her down. And John, he couldn't have been very old, but he got a hold of her, and he said, "I'll never let you go," and he didn't.
And saved her life.
Yeah.
It just happened that the wagon was down low enough it didn't get over her head.
Oh, my.
You've heard of people getting caught in grain bins, suction.
Yes.
Same thing with that was wood bin.
Wow.
That grain fall. That's dangerous stuff, that grain.
Oh, yeah. Right. You can get buried in a blink, right?
Yeah.
It can happen in such a hurry. That's a great story. Okay, so a couple of the other changes. Number one, Glenn, I know that you are not a fan of tattoos. Tell us why you're not a fan of tattoos.
Oh, where? Texas.
Tattoos.
Oh,
That's one of the changes. Are you?
Yeah, because when I was little, if a woman had a tattoo, she was sort of looked down on. And now the girls have all got, and men too.
Yeah.
That's just the way you grew up, I guess.
And the other thing that you have down here is mud roads to oil roads.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that when you were younger, it was all dirt roads and
all dirt road.
Yeah.
Back the one I lived on, there was one half a mile away. It was rock. But the rest of the mountain and country roads were dirt, and then they started oiling them, and that really improved things.
Yeah, it's a lot smoother. It's better for the vehicles.
Yeah, well, you didn't get stuck in a moat hole.
Right. And Judy, we talked earlier about the simplicity of life, and one thing that's changed, I know for you and for all of us, is that technology has caused our lives to go so much faster, right? Because we're so accessible, and people can always get in touch with us, and there's not as much time to savor life as there was, is there?
Right.
So, and how has that changed for you when you talk about pace of life?
Well, I can remember back, like all this new technology, I can remember back years ago, they was just having conversation, and they was talking about one of these days there'll be, if you're talking to somebody on the phone, you'll be able to see them. And I can remember laughing, that won't ever happen. And now, you do. I mean, you can get on your iPad and
Yeah.
talk to them and see them too. So
It's amazing. And there's a lot of good for that too, right? Because if you
There
have
is.
kids that live far away and
There is.
you want to be able to see grandkids, that's one of the
Oh, yeah.
positives, right?
yeah.
So I want to know about you two getting close, because obviously Peggy and Judy, your sisters. What was the dynamic like? And Glenn, we'll start with you, between you two couples. Start with you with your friendship with Judy and Glenn.
Well, they was a little older than us, and they had already started a family. So we really didn't go out too much together early, did we?
No, as far as that
was a
goes.
family thing.
Well, Glenn worked, and was away a lot. And then seemed like when I was working, Peggy wasn't, and then vice versa. And, of course, we was so busy with both of our boys was in sports, basketball, softball. Their dad coached summer softball for them. So, but we were really close. We were there for one another. I mean, if we might not have run around together, but if one needed the other, we was there.
And then what about family traditions? Did you have any traditions that you spent together?
Yeah, her mom would cook Sunday dinner, and she'd make noodles and fried chicken, and it was really good. She was a good cook, and
There was there was another sister and brother. So we always had big Christmases at Mom's.
So, and that was a time, I'm guessing, that the trains probably let you be free on Christmas.
no, I've worked Christmas
Even
Day.
Christmas, huh?
Yep, I've worked on Christmas Day.
Wow. But tell us some of the memories you have of when you weren't on Christmas. What did you like best about the traditions that you developed at Christmas time, Glenn?
Oh, just like every family, it was nice to be home with the kids when they opened their presents.
Right.
But that one Christmas I was gone. I was in Cairo. I laid over in Cairo, and then what they call a local train stopped at every little town and picks up cars and sets out cars and works that. And we laid over down there, and they said we'd come back, but we didn't. We laid over, and I had to come back on Christmas Day.
Wow. So that's a bummer that you missed.
That was a bummer.
Yeah. And then, Judy, I know that you have some recollections from the holiday season, too. What are some of your favorites?
Well, with me, when I was a little girl, most of my Christmas Eves was spent at my grandparents because it was just magical. They just had a way of making it magical. Did she have a big, huge tree and a lot of decorations? No, she had a little tree about like this with maybe half a dozen little bubble lights on it. But and no presents went under the tree until we were asleep. And then I remember the first time I was wondering, is there a Santa Claus? So I stayed awake, and Grandma got up, and I would sneak around and watch her. But Christmas never wasn't the same after I found out Grandma was Santa Claus.
And then what about putting up your tree at home with your mom?
Well, putting up the tree at home, I don't really, like I say, I spent more Christmases at Grandma's, but then when we had the boys, that was a big thing for them because we just lived just across the field there from, and Mom would always have a big Thanksgiving dinner, and then when that was all over and everybody had gone home, the tradition was for my two little boys to come down there, and then they put up the tree with Grandma.
Oh, that's wonderful. What great memories. Okay, I want to ask you both, and Judy, I'm going to start with you. In your lives, what has made you the happiest? When have you been your happiest? Start with you.
Well, when I was younger and the kids were growing up and all the things we did together, it just, because now My husband's gone, and I live alone. And just, yeah, that was the happiest days of my life, when your family's young and you doing things together.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Glenn? What made you the happiest?
When I had Peg.
Uh-huh.
When you lose your spouse, it's just a different world, and you'll never know till it happens to you.
Oh.
That's
You
the
can't
same
tell,
for me.
You can't tell nobody.
And did you, Glenn and Judy, did you lose your Glenn and Peg? Was it within close timing of each other?
No.
No, she died in 2010, New Year's Day, and Glenn just passed away in September 21,
Oh, okay.
Kobik.
Hmm?
Kobik.
Oh,
COVID.
COVID got him, huh? And that was, you talk about another thing that just seemed so out of the ordinary well, it was out of the ordinary, but wasn't it strange to have to go through life with that disease in our world? For me, I couldn't believe it, and you guys have never been around for something like that.
No.
That was just such a strange time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, kind of surreal. Okay, so I want to I want to get to your kids. I want you to be able to talk because this is for your descendants. It's for your kids and your grandkids. So, Glenn, I'd like to start with you. What is your strongest memory of Luann, and tell us about what you tell her what you think of Luann.
Oh, she's a super good girl, and she's. No, I don't know what I'll say to her, other than she's very, very special to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Dawn is too, and John.
Okay. And so from the time, for example, as we speak, Luann is 53, Dawn is 50, John is 47. In the life of Luann, what strikes you about her? What do you see from Luann in your mind's eye, the first thing that comes to mind?
She's a little more bossy than.
Okay.
I don't know where she get that from, but maybe from me. Mm-hmm. But when we first moved into a house that we first lived in, she was just crawling, and this thing was, look, we were moving out of a house trailer into this house, and had a great big living room, and she couldn't find her mom because it's a bit. She's having to crawl around and look for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably, I remember that part of it more than anything about her.
Okay. And then what about Dawn? What do you remember most about her?
Her getting in the cake pan.
That's a great memory.
Yeah.
And then John is with us here in the studio
Yeah.
today. What's your strongest memory of John, either growing up or through manhood here?
He's, when he was little, like I said, he just wanted to work, and he was a big buddy of his grandpa's, my dad. Mm-hmm. And when he started driving, when he had to look through the steering wheel, you could do that out in the country.
Uh-huh.
And the girls, I taught them young too, but he was driving they was up at the other place, and my dad sent him to get something in an old blue Ford truck, and he was coming back, and my neighbor came up the road and saw this truck coming up, and he couldn't see anybody in it, and he was wondering how he's going to get that truck stopped, and then he saw John in there, but he was looking through the steering wheel.
Oh, man. That's a great memory. That's what we're looking for here today. And Judy, what do you want to know? What's your strongest memory of Sean here that was with us?
Oh, that'd be hard to say the strongest. He's just always been a special little kid, a special little boy. I've always told him, he's a good Christian man, wonderful dad, and so was our other son, his brother Bart.
I want you to tell us about Bart too. What should we remember? What do you want your family to remember about or know about Bart?
Well, he was married. He had one son. He was a special ed teacher. Took he really cared for the kids he worked with. He spent a lot of time with them outside of school too, and Sean's the same way. They're just good people. They're good, caring people to help others in any way they can.
And I can tell you're very, very proud of them.
I am. I'm blessed.
Okay, now I want to have you both talk about your spouses. And Glenn, I'll start with you as your children and grandchildren view this and listen to this. What do you want them to remember about Peggy?
Oh, she's a super pretty lady. And she was kind, very Christian.
Mm-hmm.
She believed in Jesus. I couldn't believe how much she believed in him. But she just was a great lady.
Mm-hmm. And in talking to you during this time, it sounds like she did everything for you and the family. She was totally devoted, right?
Yeah, she was.
So
yeah, she's devoted to her family.
Wonderful. And Judy, what about your Glenn? What do you want your kids and grandkids to know about him?
He was a very good provider. Worked hard. Not only did he work at the railroad, but he could fix about anything, or he was just real handy. And he'd take any job he could get to make extra money. Mm-hmm. He always spent time with his boys. Lots of time fishing and hunting, and matter of fact, just maybe a year before he passed, Sean rented a hunting range where they provide all the guns, ammunition, and the dogs, because his dad used to be a big quail hunter. Mm-hmm. And they went and spent the day together and filmed it, which now that's a priceless memory.
I can imagine. It doesn't get any better than that.
But he spent lots of times with his boys. He was coach for when they played summer ball, and he was a good dad.
Wonderful. Now I want you to give your grandchildren, and maybe even your great-grandchildren who are listening to and watching this, you have the advantage now of experience, and you've lived a long and productive life. What advice do you have as your grandchildren and great-grandchildren go through life, Judy?
I don't have any great-grandchildren.
But you will.
Well, I adopted Pegs. I mean, mm-hmm. not legally, but what I'd like to say to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren is spend more time with Grandpa and Grandma. Mm-hmm. I know it's a busy world out there, and everybody's doing their own thing, but Grandpa and Grandmas can sit by the phone a long time waiting for it to ring, and it don't. Mm. So, and I know with my Grandpa and Grandma, I'm so glad that I had them in my life. Means a lot.
That's
meant
great
a lot.
Advice. Yeah, and it just ultimately makes people happy. They'll be happy because of it, and grandparents will be happy because of that too.
If a child doesn't have grandparents that they can be around or be with, they're missing out on a big portion of their life.
Very well said. And how about you, Glenn? What advice do you have for your grandchildren and your descendants?
Don't get tattoos.
Yeah. But you
No.
Go ahead.
No. I just want them to stay away from drugs and alcohol as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But drugs especially, because that stuff is mean today. Yeah. I didn't have to fool with that when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know what marijuana was.
Right. Yeah.
But marijuana is sort of mild to some of the stuff they got today.
Right. There is a lot out there. But you also have experienced the value of hard work and having a really good work ethic.
Yeah,
what would you want people to know about that?
I just think you got to work to make it. Life does not owe you a living. Mm-hmm. You got to work for it.
Right. So, and sometimes you have to sacrifice. You make great sacrifices
Yeah, you go
for your family.
And your spouse, you can't always have it your way. You got to split it up, half and half, 50-50, if you can.
How much fun has it been here? Not just because you're being interviewed, and I hope that this was. I know Judy, you were nervous when you came in, but having John and Sean here, having your kids here, has that made a difference for you? Having them in the studio with us?
Yes, it's helped a lot.
Good, I'm glad. And John set this up, and it's been great to get to know you. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for telling the story. And we hope that your family enjoys this for generations to come.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Glenn and Judy with us on SoundStory. I'm Randy Karraker. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy this.